From football recruiting news to our first season review for the men's basketball team, there's a lot of stuff to get to on this episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. So let's get right on into it.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. I serve as a credential media member for Cardinal Sports Zone. I also do some PA announcing work for the university in various sports. I want to take this time, as always, to personally thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. We're going to start out the show talking about two new additions to the football program. First, in 2023 recruit Rayquan Adkins. We will then talk about Jacksonville State defensive back transfer Nicario Harper. We'll then transition into talking a little bit about the 2023 football recruiting class as a whole, talk about the positions that Scott Satterfield and company have addressed thus far and which ones are still needing some attention early on. And then in the final segment, we will discuss our first season review for the men's basketball team that will be dedicated to Sydney Curry. But starting out with football recruiting news, kind of delayed it a little bit because it seemed like more commits were on the horizon. Dave Lackford, the staff writer over at the Louisville Rivals site, had apparently, I don't have subscriptions to any of these message boards or anything like that. But it seemed like there was a ton of chatter from the message boards, according to some of my friends that are on the boards, about a couple possible commitments. So I kind of wanted to hold off a little bit and see if any more were going to commit before the end of the week. It doesn't look like that is the case. There may be some that commit on Friday, but overall, so far, there have been two commitments coming from last weekend's big visitor list. Both were in attendance at the university on their visits last weekend. We'll start out with 2023 defensive back Rayquan Adkins, 5'10.5", cornerback from Dade Christian School down in Miami. I believe he's actually going to play at Miami Northwestern for his senior season, which, for those who aren't aware, is where Teddy Bridgewater came from, Tutu Atwell, so on and so forth. Not necessarily ranked on the 24/7 Sports composite page, but that's not to be worried about. With the 2023 class, the junior class, it takes a little while for some of the ratings to become finalized, to get caught up to speed. On 24/7 Sports, he is an 86th grade 3-star, which is a mid 3-star guy, and that would be pretty high in this class for Louisville. Overall has offers from Georgia Tech, Miami, Pittsburgh, South Florida, so on and so forth. He's gotten some very solid ACC offers. I have to be honest, I think a lot of people throw around the term diamond in the rough, awful lot, too much sometimes when talking about recruiting, when talking about, underrated guys. But I really think that Rayquan Adkins kind of embodies that sentiment of being a diamond in the rough type prospect because, he comes from a very talented area down in South Florida. There's, places around the country to where, some players that are very talented sometimes get a little bit overlooked because of the sheer amount of talent in a certain spot. South Florida, Texas, California, Louisiana, Ohio, so on and so forth. When you watch his film, he's very, very impressive. I love his ability to read the quarterback's eyes and be able to kind of project where the quarterback is going. Does a great job of jumping passing routes. Physical corner for his size, only about 5'10", 5'11". If his 24/7 Sports page is correct and he's about 155 pounds or something like that, he's going to need to bulk up a little bit at the college level. But with the strength and conditioning program that the Cardinals have, I don't necessarily think that that's going to be too big of an obstacle. But very, very impressed by his film. I think that he does very solid in coverage. Times routes perfectly. Really is able to high point the football. Very athletic for his size. Able to contend with taller receivers, and just has a very solid ability to not only be able to read opposing quarterbacks' decision making, but also make a play on the ball and either deflect a pass or just simply intercept it. So I think that when you watch him play, the footwork is something that shows signs of really being a plus level attribute at the next level. I am extremely high on Rayquan Adkins as a true boundary cornerback. On the outside, I think that despite being a little bit on the smaller side at 5'11", he has all the intangibles and the quickness with his feet and the athleticism to really be a solid cornerback at the ACC level, and could contend for playing time right away at Louisville, kind of like Kenai Walker did in his first year, in his first year immediately at Louisville. So the next addition is a little bit different. It's not a 2023 recruit. It is a transfer that is immediately eligible for this season. That is that is Jacksonville State safety Nicario Harper, who has spent the past couple seasons with the Gamecocks and has had an incredible stint with the FCS program. FCS All-American, first team FCS selection. I want to read off a little bit of this excerpt from Jacksonville State Gamecocks Sports, their official website page, because I think that it really sheds light on just how well he's progressed from initially transferring from Southern Miss. Keep in mind, he had a little bit of an injury riddled season this past year, still very solid, but really shined in the 2020-21 season. Started 12 of 13 spring and fall games in his first full season with Jacksonville State. Received numerous postseason honors and awards as he was named OVC Defensive Player of the Year. He goes on to say AP First Team All-American, All OVC First Team Safety, etc. Various OVC weekly honors, including Newcomer of the Week, Defensive Player of the Week. Led the team in tackles with 92, half of them coming unassisted. Recorded at least six tackles in all but 2 contests on the season, with a career high 13 coming against Tennessee Tech. So on and so forth. 6'1", 205-pound red shirt. I think he's a red shirt junior, I should say. I'm not sure exactly how much collegiate eligibility that he has, but ultimately Scott Satterfield has pretty much made it known this offseason that it is about replenishing the cupboard that is the defensive back room. Not only were they a little bit on the short end side when it comes to depth, but when the transfers of Kenai Walker, Greedy Vance, etc., all across the board, the defensive back room needed some bodies in it. Scott Satterfield has had some late additions to the 2022 high school recruiting class, but he's also made an impact in the transfer market. Temple safety MJ Griffin, Duke transfer Jalen Alexander. Now you add Harper from Jacksonville State, who at 6'1" reminds me a lot of like a Quinterio Cole and MJ Griffin, to where he's solid in pass coverage, but I think the best thing that he brings to the table is his ability to cover sideline to sideline. Very solid tackler, has a very solid technique as well when it comes to wrapping up defenders or wrapping up opposing ball carriers, I should say. But I think he's a very solid player in the run game. That's something that Louisville's going to be able to utilize. I'm kind of stepping for Quinterio Cole, which seems like MJ Griffin would get the starting nod alongside Kendra Duncan Jr. But, adding another body to the secondary room, a solid addition. There's always a little bit of maybe not concern, but question as to whether or not, a player coming from an FCS level can continue to leave a mark at the FBS level, especially a high Division I level. So that will be the question that needs to be answered as, he gets acclimated with the program. We'll see how he does in team practices, scrimmages, and stuff like that. But overall, I think it's a pretty solid addition. Both of them are both Adkins and Harper, and I'm interested to see how each will play a respective role when their time comes. I kind of want to take a step back and look at what Louisville has done with the 2023 recruiting class so far. Talking about they've done a great job of addressing the defensive backs needs. But also there are some other positions that I think that they need to hone in on. We will talk about those here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at Built Bar. It's usually the time of year that every year I pretty much give up on all my resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not even really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. If you haven't tried the Puffs, they're incredible. They're the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy. They're not just a protein bar. They're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate, as are all of the Built Bar products. They're low-calorie, high-protein. So you can go to Built.com and scroll down to the macros chart, and you'll be blown away with the numbers. Most Built Bars contain an average on about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and about 17 grams of protein. There are a seemingly endless amount of flavors from mint brownie to coconut, cookies and cream, etc., so on and so forth. Do yourself a favor, go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Once again, let's use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen every day. Make sure to check out Locked On Bracket Breakdown March 14th right here on the Locked On Louisville podcast feed and YouTube channel. College basketball experts Chris Gordy, Andy Patton, and betting expert Lee Sterling give you in-depth breakdowns on every matchup. Taking a little bit of a step back, looking at the Flyville 23 class as a whole thus far, there are only 6 commits in the class. Currently speaking, on Friday morning, like I said, I don't know whether or not there's going to be a commit today or over the weekend. And seemingly from Dave Lackford, apparently, some commits are on the horizon. So far, right now, there are 6 commits. The class is ranked second in the Atlantic Coast Conference, 13 nationally, with an average recruiting rating of about 88.46 on 24/7 Sports, which is one of the highest, if not the highest, in Louisville football history when it comes to recruiting databases. So far, 4 of the commitments are defensive backs, and I think that that's an area that Louisville is going to continue to need to address over the next couple of recruiting classes, because it seems like there's been a little bit more turnover than usual, especially at the cornerback position. But when you look at after this season, MJ Griffin is, I think he's gone. Kendra Duncan Jr. is gone. You have some other transfers, Jalen Alexander. So safety position, there's going to be multiple. I'm not sure how many years of eligibility Harper has left, but overall, there are spots in that safety room that need to be filled. When you look at the cornerback room, Kittrell Clark, Chandler Jones, likely gone. We'll see in terms of some other guys. I think Jaden Williams, the USC transfer, may be gone as well. So needless to say, there is a ton of need for defensive backs in this recruiting class. And, Scott Satterfield has done that. Louisville Male High School, shout out to my alma mater, cornerback / safety hybrid. He can play both. Jeremiah Collins, high 3-star guy. He's going to be very, very solid for the Cardinals. You also have, Martell Height, 3-star guy out of Georgia, cornerback, 3-star safety, Jaden Davis, also from Georgia, and then 3-star cornerback, Rayquan Adkins. So, and it seems like, they're still in on some other guys. I can see them taking, 6 or so defensive backs. It looks like it's going to be a full class for the Cardinals, a full 25, maybe even a little more with the way the, with the portal works and stuff like that. But as of right now, it seems like defensive back is going to be, on the forefront. Pierce Clarkson, obviously, you have your signal caller of the class, the crown jewel, so to speak. And then you also have a solid pass rusher and Adonijah Green, 3-star edge rusher from Georgia. So overall, I think that it's a very good start. Obviously, top 15 class thus far. That's probably not going to hold up to the way, toward the end of the season. But ultimately, when you look at what probably needs to be addressed the most moving forward, I look at when we look at offensively, obviously you want to bring in, a couple offensive linemen every class, and it seems like there's going to be some added soon. Wide receiver, I think, is going to be a solid need. I could see them taking, maybe 3 wide receivers in this class. When you talk about the transfers, D. Wiggins, this is his last year of eligibility, I believe. You have some other guys that could possibly be gone at the end of this season. So there's a need for a couple guys in the wide receiving room. I think that it's imperative that they add a running back. With Tyon Evans possibly going to the draft after this, Jalen Mitchell being an upperclassman, Travion Cooley being a sophomore, adding a running back to probably replace Evans would be smart. It'll be interesting to see what they do in the tight end realm. I think that they'll probably add 1 tight end to the class. Marshawn Ford is leaving after this season. So it seems like, offensively speaking, they could probably address every position. That kind of holds up for defense as well. They're addressing the defensive back room, very solidly. I think that the defensive line is an aspect to where we're going to need to see some, depth on the interior. They're doing a great job of addressing the edge rushing, but I think, addressing the interior defensive line is another big spot on the priority list. The linebacking core, they added a lot of young linebackers in the 2021 Flyville 21 class. 2022, I feel like I'm losing my train of thought. 2022, when you look at the class overall, I'm not sure if I don't even think they added a linebacker in the class. Obviously there may be some that ultimately transfer from defensive back to linebacker. So we will see how that kind of transpires. But I think that defensive line, interior defensive line, linebacker are probably the 2 big needs, overall throughout this class. And then also wide receiver on offense is probably where I kind of gravitate toward. But obviously very, very good start. And if good news comes, we will obviously, talk about it on the show. So overall, very, very ecstatic for the way that this recruiting class has started. You have a player recruiter in Pierce Clarkson, who has done a great job of getting guys on campus, getting some highly rated guys to commit and stuff like that. And shout out to the coaching staff for what they've been able to do as well. So we'll talk about recruiting news as it comes along. But I want to finish the week starting the season review series for the men's basketball team. First up in this series is going to be Sydney Curry, who had a very solid year. We will talk about his best game as a Cardinal this season. Do we think he'll be back next year, and what his overall role may look like? We'll do that here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at BetOnline. Look, it's that time of the year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. It's the best time of the year from all the latest odds, contests, and player props. BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all of your sports betting needs and info, and it remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. Look, it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting in your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Look, Sydney Curry, I wanted to start out with him first in this series because ultimately I think that throughout the last month and a half to 2 months of the season, he was the best player on this team. Look, when you look at his season averages, not necessarily jumping off the page, 7.1 points per game, 4.4 rebounds per game. However, he did so very efficiently scoring-wise, 67.2% from the field. Just overall, very solid interior presence that Louisville had been lacking for multiple years. So, a breath of fresh air when it comes to interior scoring. Best game for Sydney as a Cardinal this season. I'm going to go with the last game of the regular season against Virginia. 24 points, career high, 14 rebounds. Shot the ball 9 for 13 from the field. That's good. That's good for just under 70% from the field. And he had 3 assists to go along with that as well. So not his career high in points. He got the career high a couple of games before against Wake Forest. Had 28 points in that one, but I thought that he looked very dominant in the season finale against Virginia. Ultimately, I think Sydney comes back. Alan Thomas, good friend of the show, owner of the T-Shirt Hooligan, writer for the state of Louisville.com, one of my really, really good friends. He was on the Cardinal Sports Zone podcast last Sunday saying that he didn't have any inside information, but that he believed that Sydney Curry would be back. That it feels like that kind of goes along with what other people in the media have been kind of alluding to, although nothing is for sure set in stone. I do think that he will be back next season. I think that he will be a starter next season. When it comes to his role and what we could see from Sydney in the 2022-23 campaign, simply put, I think with the right coach, I think that Sydney could be flirting with all ACC recognition, possibly being on an all ACC team. Because ultimately I think that with the right usage, overall role in the offense, he could end up being, a walking double-double. He's very solid in terms of rebounding, got better as the season went on in terms of scoring. You could tell the game slowed down for him. The level of play slowed down for him, and he really was able to leave his mark on this team throughout the last month and a half of the season. So, at the end of the day, I think that through this season we learned, of his resiliency. He kind of came into this season. A lot of people thought, okay, you're looking at maybe the backup 5 at the most, maybe third stringer, really depending on how guys like Roosevelt Wheeler came along. But it was clear, the expectations that Louisville had for Jalen Withers and Malik Williams weren't necessarily being met. Roosevelt Wheeler didn't necessarily get a lot of run. J.J. Traynor didn't get a lot of playing time. Gabe Wisnitzer battled injury to start the season. He didn't necessarily have a huge role. So Sydney Curry was the one that stepped up for the Cardinals. For this season, I give him an A. I can't go A+ because he did only average about 7 and 4. But context speaking, or considering context, I should say, I think that he had a very solid season, especially a very good end of the season. Really was a force that the Cardinals relied upon on offense, and played with his heart out. We saw, after the Duke game, there were reports of him being emotional afterwards in the tunnel, heading to the locker room, and I feel like that's just the that's the energy, that's the spark that we need in this program. Is we need guys to care like Sydney Curry does. So very, very happy that he chose to come to Louisville, and I really, really hope he's back. I think ultimately he will be back. Obviously, no inside information there, but I do think that Sydney Curry will be with the Cardinals next season, and I think he's going to be able to make a step forward in his overall progression. He's going to be efficient around the rim. I would look. One thing that I want to see more from him is I'd like to see him, become a little bit better of an interior defender in terms of being a possible rim protector. I know he's only about 6'8", but I do think that with his size and strength and his length and athleticism, I do like the possibility of him being at least a serviceable rim protector. Offensively speaking, I'd like to see him expand his range a little bit more and start to look into the mid-range, shoot those 12 to maybe even 15 footers by the end of next season, and overall just continue to improve around the rim, and just become a better facilitator, in the paint. I feel like with the way that he plays and how strong he is, he's a mismatch, and college coaches know it. So, naturally the help defense kind of gravitates towards Sydney, and I'm looking forward to him improving on, kind of kicking it out when need be and taking it when he needs to. And that all comes with, game reps and the right coaching and stuff like that. So I'm very excited for what Sydney Curry can bring to the table for the 2022-23 campaign. Before we get out of here, I want to give a shout out to the Cardinal Sports Zone podcast. The most recent episode dropped on last Saturday. The newest episode will drop soon here in the next couple of days, so you can check that out at cardinalsportszone.com. It's episode 150 today. I can't believe it's gone by that quickly. Just a reminder, there is a new Locked On Louisville YouTube page. It's most people have kind of caught on by now. You can find that on social media at LO_Louisville is the Locked On Louisville Twitter page. But definitely appreciate everyone through the first 150 episodes for liking, sharing, subscribing, listening to the podcast on all streaming services. Thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen every day. On Monday, hopefully there will be some more recruiting news. We will discuss that. We'll talk a little bit about bracketology for the women's basketball team, and we'll do some more season reviews. Now, do yourself a favor. Make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you like to get your podcast. That's going to wrap up this week of the show. Everyone have a great day. Have a great weekend. Go Cards, and we will see you right back here on